Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to go over the removed premium vehicles which are going to be available for sale again, once again, from the 2nd of November in the War Thunder client. Now, another thing that I also want to mention before we get started is a few events that are going on this weekend. The first one is the Halloween in War Thunder event, and it seems like they're doing some similar stuff compared to what they've done in the past. So what they're doing is some races when it comes to the M18 Hellcat. Basically, you get a souped up Hellcat and you get to run around the place. It's actually really fun. I would definitely give it a go for a little bit, and you can get yourself some decorations if you earn 300 rating points in the ground event. So you can get either the Jack-o'-lantern, the witch's hat, the slasher's hatchet, or the cannibal axe. These are all available that you can get, and they have all been available in the past. I actually have all of them already from previous events. And then you also have an aircraft event, the Witch Hunt, and if you earn 300 rating points in that one, you can get yourself one of these decals, and if you are in the top 1,000 pilots, you also can permanently receive the unique PO2 biplane. So the PO2 is once again available for the 48 hours if you get into the top 1,000 in the event, so make sure to try and get there, make sure to try and get it. It's a unique, cool, interesting vehicle and a wonderful part of War Thunder's history. The other one as well, the Phantom Menace, they're bringing in, or have already had in, the submarine events, but unfortunately it's closed due to technical issues. This seems to be a copy and paste event of the April Fool's event that we had a little bit ago with the submarines, so c'est la vie. Maybe it will come back, maybe it won't, but at the end of the day, it's a submarine event, so if it does, make sure to get involved so you can get involved in some submarine gameplay. Now we have the 8th anniversary specials. So they've brought back 5 GE vehicles. Now the way this is going to work is all of these vehicles are just going to be back into the game in their respective tech trees on the 2nd of November. So you can pick these up for GE if you want to on that day or at a later date. When they've done this in the past, they haven't removed these vehicles for GE. They've just left them in the tech tree. So I don't think there's going to be a big, difference when it comes to this event. The one thing I would like to note before we start, they are bringing back the STRV-81, which was the British premium, basically the Centurion Mark III with access to some missiles, but it's actually going into the Swedish tree in rank 4. So the premium STRV-81 is similar to the Great Britain one and will be placed in the Swedish tree. So owners of the British one will keep it in the British tree and may purchase the Swedish one as well. So this one is not coming back in the usual way. It's being put in a separate tree, so it will be a separate vehicle. So that is kind of interesting. Now let's go through opinions time. So the first one, the Curtiss Hawk H81A2, this lovely little machine right here. This was a pre-order pack vehicle for the Chinese to be able to get access to the CBT of their aviation, and when it comes to the H81, I would say it's generally a quite good aircraft. It has access to good armament in the form of 50 cals. You also get access to some secondary armaments in the form of bombs, so therefore it can work in ground realistic or air realistic, and it generally has pretty good flight performance to be able to combat the machines that you face. The H81 is also a really good way of getting past a lot of vehicles that maybe you've already played before. If you haven't played China, and but you've played the Soviets and the Americans and the Japanese, you might be familiar with a lot of the vehicles that they have. So this would be a way to skip a bunch of them and get to the unique vehicles if you are interested. The general plane itself has good climb rates, good mid-altitude, and also pretty okay high-altitude performance. It generally is good once it has an advantage, but it's all up to you to try and get that advantage in the first place, and you can get that through altitude, you can get that through positioning, you can get that through playing the supporting fighter, meaning when one person gets dived on, you dive on the person who dives, all of these wonderful stuff, but you can definitely clean going up in this aircraft because of the amount of ammunition you have and also the guns that are available on this machine. I would definitely say this is a good pickup. I would recommend it, especially since it is quite cheap at 850 GE, and also since there isn't a ton of people who I've found that have got involved in the Chinese tree, this could easily be the Kickstarter for you to get interested in it. The next one that is available is, of course, the SDRV-81. Now, the SDRV-81 is basically just a Centurion Mark III, I think is the way I'm going to put it. The Centurion Mark III, you know, with access to the ATGMs, which are keyboard guided, so they're not mouse guided. And they also fire upwards, so you have to arc them down. Generally, I don't see too much of a use for the ATGMs. It seems a lot of people use them to try and finish off targets, or, you know, in desperation. Because normally when you're firing them, you already have your gun on the targets, and therefore you're out in the open, so therefore, you know, you get kind of screwed. But generally, the Centurion Mark III platform is an incredibly good one in War Thunder. There is a reason why the whole British lineup of 6.7 went up to 7.0, and the SDRV-81 being around that BR as well doesn't really surprise me. It has okay mobility, not the best mobility in the game, but good enough. It has a very strong gun, which has access to APDS, which can penetrate pretty much anything that it fights. It has a decent reload. The armor can be bouncy, but not reliable. But the main thing that this has over a lot of its opponents at the BR is a stabilizer on the gun. And this means that what you can do is you can always guarantee the first shot off in an engagement by either peeking or by playing defensively or by turning a corner. You can always catch the enemy off guard because your gun will be stabilized and theirs will not be. So it will be much easier for you to hit the target. Now, even though the APDS or the AP shells from this machine don't do as much damage as some other shells such as APCBC with HE filler or just straight APHE, if you are accurate with your shots, which this gun is incredibly accurate, it is very easy on a lot of vehicles because you can penetrate pretty much anything you want to go through them and to hit stuff like the driver and the gunner, immobilizing the vehicle, and then you can pick off the other crew members. It's overall a incredibly good vehicle in that regard, and I would highly recommend this vehicle because of it. I've had a lot of great times with the British, with their lineup, and also, when you have a look at the Swedish lineup, which this is going to be a part of, they already have a Cent Mark III. They have the USH, or the USH, then you've also got the IKV-91. You've got a really, really nice lineup there, which is also backed up by the J21 and A21, the jet engine versions of them, which are really strong as well, especially the A21 with those wonderful rockets. So it's just a monster of a lineup for the Swedish. Why not add to it and use it to be able to get yourself some RP, get yourself some SL? It just makes sense in my book. Then we also have the Italian M60. The Italian M60 comes back into the game after many slightly different controversies which it has seen in the past. If you didn't know about this M60, it started off life with a stabilizer and a few other things, but nowadays it has been dropped in BR and doesn't have a stabilizer. It's basically very similar to the 7.7 one that you see in the American tree with slight differences, and at 7.7 the Italians already have a pretty interesting lineup with the OF40 being there, the OF40 being an incredibly good 7.7, probably my favorite 7.7 in the game. It has great mobility, really good optics, has access to heat FS, which works really well at that BR, and generally has access to some nice rounds, and the gun is not too stable, but once upgraded works very well. So as a backup to that vehicle, the M60 works really nicely. I would never like an M60 to be my primary vehicle. Now, the reason for this is because I don't see it as reliable, especially since it has no stabilizer and it's also the size of a small apartment complex, so it's very easy to see, and also the majority of people know where to shoot M60s nowadays, even if that upper and lower front plate can be quite trolley. They've also made improvements to the gun unmantle it, giving it more armor. So maybe it is a little bit harder to kill nowadays with the volumetric changes when it comes to the shells. But to be honest, I've had no issue being able to deal with them, but I'm going to have to do more research into that. Overall, it's a very standard tank. It will work very well in that 7-7 Italian lineup, and even if you want to bring it to 8-0 or something like that, I still think it has a place, because a fully modified M60 is a really nice machine to play, whereas a stock one is abysmal to play. Luckily, this is a premium, so you get it fully done up. The next vehicle is the AMX50, and this is slightly different to the one in the tech tree. It has all the same features, apart from it doesn't have the 20mm cannon, the coaxial. Instead, it has a 12.7mm, which of course does drop the power level of this machine quite a lot. That 20mm is really nice because it means that you can knock guns, you can knock tracks, you can knock barrels, all of this from other enemies, but at the same time you still have the very mobile platform of the AMX50, and also the gun, which is incredibly good at taking out really whatever it feels like. The survivability of the AMX50 is not incredibly high, but the survivability comes from its mobility and also its rotation of the turret and the gun itself. No stabilizer on this machine for an 8.0 can be a little bit of a downside, but as a person who's spaded the AMX30B2 and the Brennus, I've kind of got used to that, you know. I've kind of got used to the fact that you don't rock around like crazy. The gun itself is pretty stable for a gun which isn't stabilized, so you can still move and shoot with it if you want to. The reload's a little bit long, and as I said, the survivability isn't the best, but it does have an interesting internals when it comes to the hull, so shells can get stuck on specific things, such as a big old fuel tank in the front. I would say I would pick this up because I really like the 8.0 7.7 area for France. It's a really strong BR for France with the AMX30, the Sub-Assay's up there, you got the AMX10 RC as well, the Foch if you feel like it, the Lorraine 40T, the AMX50. There's a ton of really interesting and really fun vehicles, and this would kind of be like a cherry on top of those vehicles. The next and last one is the Meteor. Now this is the F Mark 8 Reaper. Now the F Mark 8 Reaper is, well, it's an F Mark 8 which has additional ordnance on it. It can carry more rockets, it can carry some bombs. It's see it as a ground attack version of the Meteor F Mark 8. And the Meteor F Mark 8 used to be an incredibly strong vehicle, and being flown, I suppose it still can be quite a strong vehicle, but it does have its downsides. So you basically have to defensively fly constantly. That is your job in realistic battles. You basically just wait for enemies to attack you, defensively fly, make sure they can't shoot you, make sure that they overshoot, and then you try and attack them. Or if they know what they're doing and know how to set up properly, they'll just wait for you to make a mistake and then they'll shoot you down, which is my main issue with something like the Meteor F Mark 8. It has great survivability in aerialistic. It can defensively fly all day, but if you have another player who has patience, they can pick you apart, and there's not a lot you can do about it. It has access to the Hispano Mark 5s. I think these guns are fine. I know a lot of people have issues with them, but the Mark 5s, as long as you use air target belts or stealth belts, you'll do really well with them. You know, you'll chop apart planes as you feel like, and with the extra ordnance it can carry, and because it also has quite a cheap repair cost, you can either in air realistic or ground realistic use it as a ground pounder and get yourself a lot of SL, a lot of RP to be able to get into some of those later jets. Right now, Britain has a ton of 380, 390, 400,000 RP planes, and breaking that barrier can be a little bit rough. So something like the F8 F Mark 8 Reaper, if you want to break that barrier, this could be your thing. If I was going to rank all of these in terms of, you know, which ones I would buy, I would probably go, rank 1 would be the STR V81 because of just how many wonderful experiences I've had in the Centurion Mark IIIs. Then it would be the H81A2, because the Kitty Hawks or the P40s in general are very fun. Then the AMX30 to bolster the ATO lineup. Then the M60, and unfortunately in last place would be the Meteor. So yes, that would be my rankings when it comes to what to purchase and what to look at. These will be available from the 2nd of November, so make sure to have a look at them. And as always, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Trigger Hippie, Universe, Conte Baraka, Elove Goat, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Hans, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.